all those species that you don't want eating it, their feet aren't strong enough to hang upside down and feed on it. Okay, so that's a good way to do that. April and May, cut fruit, those kinds of things, like orange slices and things for orioles, apple slices, those kinds of things. You can get some of those species. Water, you know, in a yard, bird bath obviously is one source that you can do. Actually providing water this time of year can be really beneficial, and you can attract a lot of birds to your yard that maybe otherwise you wouldn't be able to do that. You can't see this. This is a little heating element in this tray on the ground right there. That's what it is there, beautiful. Some people get real creative with their water features in their yards. I always kind of throw this in there. If you've got maybe kind of a part of your property, some of you probably don't live in town, and maybe you've got some of these like little ephemeral wetlands. These are really good for amphibians, frogs and toads, for example. Salamanders, really important habitat for them. Even little ones like this, that's probably about 8 foot across, very, very valuable for them. And there's actually a guide on the internet, creating vernal ponds. If you just Google a guide to creating vernal ponds, it'll come up. There's a number of different websites that have this. It's nice. It's like a step-by-step guide. It talks about different little things you can do with a shovel and a pond liner versus much more complicated projects. Helps you pick the site and all that kind of stuff. Really kind of neat. I know the Forest Service has been doing this on the Hoosier. They've created over 100 of these things. And they do it for wildlife, but they also do it to prevent vehicular traffic on some of their roadways. So that first one off the road, they make kind of deep. So the four-wheeler tries to go in it, and they get a little surprised. But they've had really good success with not only the wildlife species that use them, but the flowers, plants, and things. Somehow it all just kind of shows up. Conifers, I haven't talked much about conifers. Certainly Morning does. We'll utilize those as nesting sites, good for winters for a lot of different species. Not much for food, although pine cones do have a seed to them that if you've never eaten them before, they're actually very, very tasty from that standpoint. Trees can be important for cavities, so a lot of our mammals and birds are cavity nesters, and so they can provide that as well. Anytime you have cavities, in dead trees and yards, you got to be worried about hazards for us, falling down, or insect problems, that kind of a thing. And so whenever you talk about dead wood around houses and stuff, you got to use your head. You can't have that stuff close to the house because of termites, carpenter ants, that kind of thing. But we can substitute with those things by putting up nest boxes for a variety of different species. These are both bluebird boxes there. This one's a good design here, recessed bottom, has a coon guard in there. If anything, I would cut that perch off, and I'd cut that perch off. Birds don't need that. Birds that you don't want will perch on there and kick the birds that you do want out. Okay? If a bird is going to perch on this bluebird, it's going to be up here, then it's going to just fly on it. They don't need to perch. Okay? You see any perches on those things? Yeah. So it's just one of those things where it looks good for us. That's why they do it. So you don't need it. If you have a bluebird box, you'll perch with it all. Again, mammals, you get squirrel boxes, flying squirrels, tree squirrels. There's boxes for them as well. Bats, a lot of bat boxes. If you make a bat box, it's not going to keep them out of your hat or house. Okay? Why keep them out of your hat? A lot of different designs for them from that standpoint. Mixed results. I know my dad, they live on a lake, and they put up this big bat house. It was a big fiasco. It was hard because that thing's got to be up 15 foot in the air, and it's got to be in the ground several feet in order to support that. So to get that big thing up was kind of a problem, but he's never seen a bat in his box. I think it's got wasps in it. But sometimes people put them up and they get bats, so it's hard to say. Just remember that bats have guano and urine and all that kind of stuff, and so you don't want to put a bat. Some things you'll read that say you want to put on the side of the house. Don't do it, okay? Because you'll get all that stuff that's corrosive and nasty, and it's just, you don't want it. Put it out of the way if you do something like that. It's got to be in the full sun though. This was a hat on my dad's porch that he had, and a prothonotary warbler ended up making a nest. It was kind of just folded over just a little bit, and they ended up making a nest down there, so I just threw that in there. Pretty cute. Prothonotary warblers are notorious. They'll build nests in just about anything. Yeah, Carolina Wren had a pair. They built in my toolbox or tool belt. Something like a little Easter thing we had that had some fake grass in it up in the garage that made a nest in there. Deadwood, really good for animals, but again, the yard thing, you gotta kind of watch that. So again, if you got some property and this is kind of away from the house, by all means, very valuable. That's a rough green snake there, pileated woodpecker, but certainly important from a wildlife standpoint. We already talked a little bit about brush piles. If I'm making them for wildlife, I got big stuff down there, so I got space and put the little stuff on top. It lasts longer. There's space for the animals to go. Generally, when I'm making them, I just pile stuff in my yard. I'm just getting rid of stuff, you know, so I just pile it up and things seem to use it, so it's okay. Rock piles, okay, sometimes you can have these along driveways or whatever as a kind of a habitat feature. This was along my parents' driveway. They had several 5-line skinks kind of hanging out in there using it. Keeps them warm, keeps them in cover. There's food in there in terms of insects, and so they're happy as a clam. But certainly one of those things. So again, kind of think of that checklist there that you can have in your yard. I think that's the best approach from a yard standpoint is, do I have evergreens? Check. A hardwood? Check. Do I have one that produces nuts? No, then that's something you might want to consider. Shrubs, vines. Ferns, I didn't really talk about ferns, but they're a native woodland species, so certainly if you have like a woodland type of shade garden, ferns and wildflowers would be a part of that. Grasses and legumes, you know, clovers, things that fix nitrogen into the soil, those have added value as well, just diversity. You can also think of it in terms of structure. The dead standing trees or down logs, but again, that comes with the caveat of around houses and stuff, you gotta watch that. A live den tree, so a lot of our oaks and beech and things have cavities in them that animals will utilize, but you can substitute some of that with nest boxes. A water feature is nice, rock or brush pile. Fence row, I'd show that picture of that fence row with the Virginia creeper on there, something to consider from that standpoint. Sometimes you might just have unique features or plants, you know. Like I look in my neighborhood, you know, we've got a lot of ash that's dying because of EAB, but there are some oaks, you know, but there's really not a lot of diversity when it comes to our trees. We've got some hackberry, some buckeye, things like that. And so if you've got something that maybe is unique for the neighborhood or the area, you might want to leave it. Okay, maybe in a book it says it doesn't have much value to wildlife, but you know, it's there for a reason. That's what I always say, but sometimes it's not clear what that is. So kind of putting it together, kind of where do you go? Well, number one is kind of what do you want to spend, okay? So you're going to pay more for immediate results. Where that really comes to fruition is with trees, okay? If you don't have trees and you need some more trees, you're either going to wait a while or you're going to spend some bucks, okay? And so you heard me, I just plant the little nuts and acorns and things like that, or berries, and just, I got all sorts of pots and things going. Sometimes I'm able to get something going where I can transplant it, other times I don't, and that's just the way it is. But if you want more results, then you're going to have to pay for that from that standpoint. You're probably going to pay more for things that aren't part of the cookie cutter landscape. So the things that you can't get at, you know, Home Depot, Walmart, those kinds of places, you're probably going to spend more money. Those places, I think, have gotten better in offering some of the things that we would want from a wildlife standpoint. But there are, fortunately, there's more native nurseries and specialty nurseries that you can have maybe locally. I think I heard one mentioned earlier. Yeah, I've heard of that one before. But a lot of them, too, will mail order things, too, because some of those nurseries, they may specialize in certain things from that standpoint. So you may have to kind of hit a couple spots in order to get the things that you want. Some of the books you'll see, I know there's one, Growing Native. She kind of talks about, because like some people go out and collect plants, okay? She does it in a way where, you know, sometimes might be a wood lot there and there's going to be something built there, so she might go in there and save a couple plants before it gets torn down. That's okay, but you don't want to go out collecting on public lands and things like that. That's a no-no, just kind of throwing that out there. Even though I know people in our department who have done it.
The plants that you've shown here tonight, are all those in our zone?
Yes, should be. Yes, they're all southern Indiana. I didn't include the northern Indiana ones. Yes. Yep. That's a good question. Edges, think about edges. So from a wildlife standpoint, edges are important because, you know, animals have different habitat needs. And so some species, maybe they need the woodlands for roosting cover or for cavities, but they like the open wildflower grass areas for insects and food, okay? And so where those habitat types meet is kind of an important area because you don't have to move very far to get those, but then also often what happens is you kind of get this special ecotone where you get kind of a higher diversity of plants because you get some of those from both of those habitat types interspersing, okay? Hard to do that in a yard, all right? You may have a wood lot or a wood's edge coming up to maybe your lawn, so you could maybe kind of enhance that edge by having some shrub plantings, things like that, to kind of create a more transitional zone down to the yard, if that makes sense, okay? That's probably the best example I can have of kind of creating something like that in the yard. The reason why this is important from a wildlife standpoint too, and they've done studies on this, where predators, where you have a very hard edge like a woodlot grass area, is that it increases their efficiency in finding nests and eating eggs and birds and things like that. And so having a more transitional area actually helps kind of give those animals more of a fighting chance. Even though predation is natural, okay? That's the way things work. So again, this is kind of a woods, but having more of a transitional area to this, okay? Obviously this is not your yard, but you can think of it, maybe this would be your grassy area. Have some wildflower plantings here, maybe have some shrub plantings here, have the woods back here, so you can kind of get an idea where I'm going there. That's kind of the best example that I can give from that standpoint. If you've got some odd areas that you're not managing as kind of like your planting beds and things like that, consider letting them be. Even things like pokeweed and poison ivy have wildlife value, even though they don't really have much value to us, okay? I've got poison ivy on my property that I kill in areas because I don't want my kids getting into it. Okay, I got other areas where I just let it go because I don't think they'll be getting into that area. If they do, it's their fault. All right. So
Then you'll go where they
some of you may not want to deal with this because in some areas this stuff is really aggressive, right? So but you just got to make the decision what's the best for you. Cats. Anytime you talk about developing habitat, especially for songbirds and those kinds of things, you got to talk a little bit about cats, okay? I had cats as a kid. We had them outside. We never gave it a second thought, all right? If I had to do it over again, we wouldn't, all right? But they can be, there's studies in, study done in Wisconsin that estimated they killed, so many millions of birds a year, that kind of a thing. Do they kill some stuff? Mice and things like that? Yeah, they do. But they kill other stuff as well. So,
Shrews, mice.
that's right.
Snakes.
Well, I guess they can get snakes.
Mine bring me snakes
Yeah.
all the time.
So we generally recommend cats stay indoors. They're not native. They can be problematic from that standpoint. Just throwing it out there. But predation is okay. Okay, so I talked about kind of some of that stuff. I guess, and we talked a little bit about the break. We were talking about predation, and I think the question was about coyotes having an impact on some of the things around the property. That's kind of the way it works, right? Okay, and so sometimes we tend to kind of become attached to birds and things like that. Maybe it's not to some other things, but that's just kind of the way it is. And so stuff eating other stuff is kind of part of the deal, and that's healthy at some level because the role of predation is to kind of thin the herd, so to speak, and so the strong can survive to produce. And so from that standpoint, so just kind of think about that, and stuff happens out there, and just want to bring that to your attention. So the other thing, okay, and this goes back to the previous one. So when you're planting all this stuff for wildlife, you're probably going to have to protect it from some wildlife in order for it to get a fighting chance. And really, most of the time, that's with deer, particularly with tree seedlings, become real problematic. You can be good for 364 days of the year, and then one day you're going to get it, kind of deal. And so that happens. So really, you got to protect stuff early on. That's really important for establishing some of this stuff. And then the last thing I'll say is be careful where you get your information. Okay, I found this. I was looking for. Like that slide I had of a goldfish on there, so I was kind of make that point. And I found this on a website, I can't remember what it was, but they're calling this a black-eyed Susan seed head.
Thistle.
No, it's not thistle.
Teasel.
Teasel, yeah. Very, non-native, aggressive weed. It's a problem. You see this on roadsides and things all the time. It can be a problem in conservation plantings and form season grasses.
What does it look like when it's blooming?
Purple.
Is it purple?
Yeah, it's purple.
Yep, it's one of those things where it doesn't stand out to me until I see it like that. But, yeah, so, always good. So if it's got an .edu or .gov or something like that, it's not good information, and anything else you kind of need to worry about. So, sorry I went through that a little fast at the end, I was kind of concerned about time, and I promised Gina I'd be out here on time. So, do you have any specific questions about tracking wildlife, getting rid of wildlife, dealing with wildlife?
Is there to become a certified wildlife habitat?
Yeah, I think the Indiana Wildlife Federation is the state version of the National Wildlife Federation. They do that. So I think you go on their website, IWF.org, I think is their website. Yes, sir.
Are there bowls in this area?
There's bowls all over the place. So we have pine bowls, meadow bowls, prairie bowls. Absolutely. So again, it's a boom buster deal. And so they cycle every 3 or 4 years.
Other questions for Brian? Hold up! Wait! We're not quite done yet. Okay, Brian, thank you for coming and speaking today.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much.
So, we need to do some homework next week, right? Homework! They get homework. They love me because I give them homework. So, next week is going to be kind of a tight week because you're going to have 3 topics on Monday night. So, the first topic is launch. That should be chapter 11 in your book. Chapter 11.
Are you gonna email this?
I will email you out tomorrow. Yeah. We're doing herbs in a small section. We have some ladies that specialize in herbs, and that's always a popular topic for everybody because everybody likes to try to grow herbs. There's not a specific chapter in the book for that, so there's no reading on that. The other topic is small fruits, and that's another master gardener is going to teach that. That's chapter 14 in your book. Okay? So that's the homework.
And then Wednesday it's chapter.
19.
Wood, 19.
Or no, 19 was for him.
No.
Woody ornamental.
Woody ornamentals.
Ornamentals.
Yeah, 10. So I'd already given that to you, so you probably already read chapter 10 for Wednesday. So just keep that in mind. And we've got to do the door prize, right? And tonight, the door prize goes to Kathy Pond. There she is. So she is
The women like chocolate.
going to get this nice little prize here. Okay. Do you guys have questions before I let you pack it up and leave?
What's the last day of class as far as testing, just because I'm trying to plan vacation?
Okay, so right now, unless Mother Nature screws with me some more, class is supposed to be, the last class is March 30th. That puts us ending before Easter. So you will get your test the week before. That should be March 23rd. I will give you your take-home exam.
Take home.
It's a take-home. Now you'll be the last class that ever happens for because they're changing some stuff. But you guys are getting a lot of information in about 13 weeks. So I'm gonna send it home for you guys. You'll have your information to go with. So you'll get that on the 23rd. You bring it back to me the next week. You will have a speaker that last week. We'll also have a little bit of a party going on because you guys will have survived 13 weeks with me. I know, and all my craziness. So that's kind of the plan. Unless Mother Nature kind of messes with me some more, that's the tentative plan, is that the 23rd you'll get your take-home exam, bring it back to me on the 30th. The 30th we'll have one final speaker and kind of a final celebration and go over everything that it takes to finish becoming certified. You guys are good. Yes, Ann.
What if we're on vacation that week, the 23rd?
Just try to,
Before, or?
yeah, just try to get with me ahead of time to get that. I know it falls into spring break. Planning wasn't the best between Mother Nature and snow and trying to get spring breaks in for everybody, so we'll work with everybody. Doris and and Mr. Carr, I've got stuff for you to come get. You guys are free to go. Mary Ann has your quiz
Badges
and the badges.